to take you back to a time, a long, long time ago. There was this, we'll call it a grand council. There was this grand council. And the whole point of this grand council was a group of super miserable people, super miserable. These people were men and women, kids that never felt joy, never felt peace. And they were sitting in council, the leadership of this group especially called this council, because they recognized that there were people on earth, people here, that had joy and peace. And they wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to destroy it because really, they wanted everyone to be more like them. They wanted everybody to have the same privileges that they had of misery, of seeing the world as it really was, as just a gosh awful place that no one could be happy, that there's no joy, that there's no hope for joy, that there is nothing but misery, drudgery, just slogging through till you're done, and then a deep sense of nothingness. And this group that was aching for everyone to be converted to this decided that they had to go about somehow figuring out how to help the happy group, the group that had joy and peace. How can we help them be more like us? And as they took this vote, as they took this this opportunity to counsel with each other and vote on different ideas, one of the first things that they decided to do is look, one of the things that caused a lot of joy with this people is these relationships. They have these family relationships where they lean into each other and they spend evenings in parlors talking and chatting, and they have strengths, but they also have weaknesses, and they seem to lean into each other in these family relationships and borrow from each other strengths, and they seem to have no pride about asking for help and learning and teaching and growing with each other. And it's really kind of destroying misery. It's causing them to have this horrible hope that there's a bright day tomorrow waiting for them. And so they'll go to sleep excited to wake up and go to work even, and then come home from work. They come home and they do stuff together. So this stuff called family, these happy families are creating all these pathways to joy and peace. So one of the first things this council decided to do is destroy the concept of family. And to get rid of this idea of family, they came up with a three-step plan. Okay, so first of all, these families that were concerning this group so much, they were a family that was consisting of individuals that would marry, have children, and then be responsible for those children and for those children's growth. And then they would put a lot of time and energy as adults, older people, into these younger people. And then when they had time left over, they would serve their neighbor families. And these families would link together in neighborhoods and communities. And sometimes they would have similar faiths, so they'd go to faith-based instructions together called churches and religions. Other times they would go to parks together and play and throw a frisbee or a football, and they would learn to lean into each other as groups as well. So we had not only households where they would support each other and teach each other and grow together, but they would have whole communities that would grow and teach and learn from each other. And it was a pretty horrible thing to see these families all kind of joining together and growing and participating. And so this group that had this council decided that they were first going to get rid of this concept of family, get rid of this concept of relationships, and start introducing some things into family systems that would cause a slow, steady destruction of them. And the very first thing that this council decided, now I want you to think, this is a council of super intelligent people. These are miserable, depressed, anxious people that have tons of intelligence, tons of experience. They know every trick in the book to manipulate and to move people how they want to move them. And they've decided to take aim at our communities. And so one of the first things that they knew they needed to put into the family to start eroding the family way is pride and ego. Now, it's given that we all have an ego, given. How we manage that ego and how we manage how the ego looks at the world and looks at ourselves is really an individual pursuit. And so pride being introduced causes this tendency to see ourselves as needing to be more secretive. Like pride would suggest that I shouldn't share my weaknesses. I should boast about my strengths. Now, families to this date, before pride was introduced, was open about their weaknesses. They talked openly with each other because they wanted somebody that had a strength to give them feedback and advice. Well, with pride, we start competing with each other instead of seeking advice from each other. Imagine a family that keeps all these secrets about their weaknesses inside because they are afraid they'll lose some battle today if their sister knows that they have a weakness, or if their husband knows that she has a weakness, or heaven forbid, if the parents know that the son has a weakness. So pride creates this a mandatory competition. And so one of the first things this Grand Council of People decide to introduce is they go out in their areas and they start introducing pride and censorship. They start saying, look, don't share your weakness, you'll get laughed at. Don't share your weakness, people will see you as less than. In fact, try to find out other people's weakness and exploit that. See if you can get ahead of the game by, if you know what your dad's weakness is, like poke at it. Make him feel bad for having it. Make little comments like you can't really do this because you have this weakness, and almost mock him. If your little sister has a weakness, tease her relentlessly, because we want all these people in relationships to prepare for when they're dating and when they're getting married for themselves. We want them to go into relationships with lots of pride, lots of competition, lots of need to be right, lots of a need to not seek advice and counsel or accept influence from someone else. So the first big thing to destroy relationships is we introduce pride. One of the things that pride kills is empathy. Now, pride kills empathy because when we have empathy for another person, we don't pity them, we understand them. Now remember, empathy is not the same as pity. Empathy is not even the same as sympathy. Sympathy is I feel bad for what you're going through. Okay, that's sympathy. Sympathy is a good thing. Empathy's I took a moment and really listened to you, and I walked in your shoes, and now I understand how you must feel based on how you see the world. See, that's empathy. Empathy is taking the time to walk in your shoes and to feel what you feel based on how you're seeing a circumstance. Now, if it's about me, that I'm empathizing with you, you might think that I was mean to you last night, and I think that I was just giving you some of my thoughts. Let's say my thoughts were, we have a house that's kind of fallen apart a little bit. And I'm talking to my wife, and I suggest that like there's a lot of clutter, and there's a lot of reason that we should be concerned about how we're keeping the house. And my wife starts to feel defensive and upset and feels like I'm attacking her. If I take a moment and use empathy, I might say, you know, sweetheart, based on what you're saying, you believe that you've been attacked and told that you're doing an inadequate job at your responsibility. And that would make me feel terrible. Like if my partner, if my lover thought that I was irresponsible and thought that I was like not keeping up my end of the bargain, I would feel devastated that opinion was had of me. And so I want you to know that I understand you must feel devastated, and I'm sorry that you feel that way. So that's not placating. It's not plagiarizing. Plagiarizing. That's not the word I'm looking for. That's not condescending. What that is me walking in your shoes for a minute and noting how you must feel based on what I presented. Now, I don't have to agree with that's what I meant to present or that's what I even said. I just have to agree that you feel that way deeply because of how you took it. That's empathy. Empathy is not competitive. It's not walking in my shoes judging you. Oh, remember, definitely a good one. Empathy is not walking in my own shoes while judging you. Okay, that's what a lot of people call empathy. Empathy is taking my shoes off and walking with you in your shoes, feeling what you're feeling, losing myself in that. Now, when this group of miserable people introduce pride, pride says, walk in your own shoes, be your own person. In fact, pride says, be your own God and judge people how you would judge people, and they must hear your judgment. And don't allow them to judge you, first, by not giving them any information, keep secrets, and second, by not admitting to anything that you've done wrong. So pride states, don't walk in their shoes. Pride states, make them walk in your shoes by judging them. So if they can get pride going, they can destroy empathy. Literally, they can destroy communication. Human beings, all these couples in relationships and all these families that are enjoying themselves can have a prideful conversation where they're competing to be right about something. And then let's literally give them Google so that they can fact check everything people are saying and really make them feel bad if they're off a little bit. Check their words and check their grammar. And then let's introduce like social media where they can be ridiculed by platforms of popular people. Because really it's not about truth and humility and learning from each other. It's about pride and being judged and who can judge the fastest and the harshest and who can get the popular, not what's correct, but the popular on their side. So pride is a big thing. Pride is the destroyer of most joy and happiness, okay? Second thing they decide to do, once they've got empathy out of the way and once they've got pride fully instilled and competition happening inside of families, they're well on their way to destroying joy. The second thing they decide to do is let's like get people busy doing non-essential and essential operations. Let's have them so busy doing things that need to be done that they forget to have an emotional contact. They forget to connect on a level of intimacy and feeling that keeps them filled with joy. In fact, let's have them so busy that husbands and wives become communicators about operations, about dividing up and conquering the world, about let's get our kids so busy that this couple has to run two directions in order to get everything done. Let's get them so busy that they're running out the door at 7 in the morning and they're not getting home till long after dark. See, these farmers that have been the masses that work all morning and then about 5 they come in and they relax in the parlor, that we got to destroy that. We got to get them busy in the evening. So let's get things lit up so they can work 24/7. And then let's make an economy such that everyone gets in debt and it starts to make it essential that they earn more and more money. Let's have them justify buying things so they can work on Saturdays. Let's have them justify getting so busy that Sundays get taken up so they don't have any kind of a day of rest and commerce. And so we have them doing commerce 7 days a week, never resting. You know, this whole thing of having a Sabbath day that the religious people call it, let's get rid of that because there's too much rest and downtime. They might nurture and nourish themselves. Let's get them so busy that they don't have a day away from commerce and from negotiating bargains and deals and negotiating buying food and products for their home. And let's have them work 7 days a week all day. So they want to help couples have time-starved relationships. They want to help families have time-starved relationships. They want these families to be so starved for time that they only have time to negotiate schedules and maybe meal times. And meal times, let's even spread that out so that they just kind of all eat at their own pace, you know, whenever they're available. Let's not have them do family dinners anymore. And so part of this time-starved second thing that they have introduced is really make couples and families so busy that they devolve into operations, and the family function is to get stuff done, not to enjoy each other's company. So how many of you just go through life getting stuff done and you're genius at it? You get an amazing amount of stuff done. You get an amazing amount of stuff accomplished, but you don't slow down, make eye contact, and connect. I have a friend the other day that I was talking with, and I noticed that he would lean in, look me right in the eyes, and listen actively as I talked. And I felt awkward, some parts of it, because he was so attentive to the conversation. And then I realized, oh, not many people do this. Not many people. I'm a therapist meeting with people. I had one little kid a long time ago that said, in an hour a week, he gets more of my undivided attention than any other person. Now think about it. He's in a family of 6. He's got a mom and a dad, and he's got 5 siblings. I gave him in 1 hour a week more attention, direct attention, than any other human. So this task of taking people and making them time-starved, making them emotional connection starved is working. So this group of people had these 2 great ideas. First, introduce pride so that we could get rid of empathy, and pride will get rid of cooperation. So we'll have, instead of empathy, we'll have judgment and sympathy. And instead of cooperation, we'll have competition. And then introduced time starvation. So we'll start robbing them of time by getting them deep in debt, by getting them deep in time debt and money debt. We'll teach them to not budget their time or money very well. And we'll have them working 7 days a week in commerce, no day of rest. We'll have them take their evenings by doing all kinds of good activities, but busy. So they devolve into managing schedules together the best they can and juggling the dividing and conquering, but never unified and just downtime, resting and enjoying each other. We'll introduce social media so that they can get needs met quicker. What used to take an hour sitting around the family dinner table now takes no more than 60 seconds on a reel to have a feeling. And so we've moved people away from family dinner to watching a 60-second reel and then moving to the next thing. And now the third thing we're going to introduce is we're going to get rid of fidelity and loyalty. We're going to introduce pornography. Now, there are counselors today in our midst that justify pornography use as long as you're not keeping it a secret from your partner. They say the secret is the mischief, not the pornography. And while they're right, there's a lot of research that would definitely support don't keep secrets. There's no good research that would support pornography use being healthy for a person's brain or for a relationship. Even if the man and the woman commit together to look at pornography together because they believe that it is an aid to their intimacy and sexuality. See, what the group that wants us all to be miserable has introduced is a way to shortcut anything that's real. So I could be kind to my wife all day. I could dote on her in courtship manner. I could flirt with her and make her feel incredibly special. I could send messages to her that I'm leaning in and that I'm learning and growing because of her. I can enjoy touch, and I can put my arms around her, give her a bear hug and a 6-second kiss at each crossroads as I come home today. I can be kind to the kids, and I can help with the chores and the duties around the house, and I can lower the anxiety in the home. And then I can have a quiet evening on the couch and maybe even make out with my wife until the point where we feel like making love, and then disappear into the bedroom and have a long, connected lovemaking experience. Or I can stay busy all day, ignore her, not connect with her, not help with the chores because I have other stuff to do. I can do so much. I can look at my social media and get a couple of 60-second clips on intimacy and feel good. And then I can sit down at 9 o'clock with my wife, flip on some pornography, watch a couple have sex, get myself and her all worked up, and then run to the bedroom and have recreational sex with her and then go to sleep. Now, which one of those 2 days feel like they're permanent, they're enjoyable, they're joy-filled, peace-filled? I'm sure all of you know the difference, but that's literally pornography is used as a shortcut to courtship. Couples that think pornography will work end up creating a wedge of jealousy and a wedge of shame and a wedge of secrecy that they have to keep. There's this notion that it doesn't objectify if you're enjoying together, which isn't true because both of them are objectifying now. He's always wondering what object he is to her. She's always wondering whether the object that she is to him is good enough because it's being compared to. And so there's this intimate killer around pornography. So I would make intimacy about recreational sex and take whatever shortcut you can with pills and with pornography and with shortcuts around courtship, and just have them have quickie sex that is not rewarding or rich, but it's very much orgasmic. And so if we can make sex about an orgasm and we can harden their hearts from courtship, we're going to win a major war against peace. So counselors of the world need to be wary of what they're suggesting. Therapists of the world need to remind people that courtship is a slow erosion of anxiety towards peace and making love, not a quick fix that's derived upon by filling your brain with images and then hurrying and having sex before the images kind of leak out and you need more, because it's not sustainable. See, the intimacy created by pornography is only sustainable through the orgasm. After the orgasm, it drops you cold and you feel like just falling asleep and rolling over. Making love makes you cuddle and hold and spoon for the hours after. And so this group that wants us miserable would like us to believe that sex is not sacred. They would like us to believe that sex is not special, but then they would also like you to see that sex is so important that you need to test it out before you get married, because what if it's not adequate? So they have this funny way of looking at it that we're going to introduce to the people of Earth. And so this group that wants us miserable sends these confusing messages about sex. It's recreation. Don't worry about it. But worry about it so much that you refuse to get married until you have it, because you don't want to trust the person unless you know how compatible sexually. Now remember, compatibility in that arena, the recreation sex arena, means that you have stamina to keep up and you have the right tools. Like you have the right toys and you have the right movies to watch and you have the right quick fixes. Courtship and making love doesn't require any kind of try it out before you're committed. It's about the commitment. And so remember, if you want to have a healthy marriage and relationship, intimacy is about intimacy and connection and commitment and lowering the anxiety and making love all day long. It's not about ignore and be busy all day and then have a quickie, okay? So really have them decide that exclusivity doesn't mean sexual exclusivity. What it means is test the waters, do lots of roaming around, do lots of selfishness. It's about you and your agenda and your schedule. So we've got this time-starved idea where we're going to get them so busy that they're not going to be able to have time to do anything more than operations and getting stuff done. And then we're going to even have them have the idea that getting stuff done is all that's important, because the more you get done, the more successful you are. And so there's this way of looking at the world that's just different than what pure intimacy is. And then we've already introduced pride to get rid of empathy and to get rid of all cooperation, and now they judge each other and they really just compete with each other. And this final one, we get rid of fidelity and loyalty by introducing pornography. Now, the reason pornography is kind of the first tool this group used to make us all miserable is because you can get a kid looking at pornography at about 9 years old, 8 years old. And as soon as you can get them abusing pornography, you're well on your way to the compulsion of pornography. So if you think about it, there's porn viewing that just happens because of television and because of social media and because of watching a Super Bowl. And so you're going to see pornography. Then there's people that look and view pornography for a purpose. And then there's the final stage of catching someone in this trap is to have them compulsively justify pornography use and seek it out nonstop. And so that's part of the time starving. They're looking for porn instead of intimacy. They're looking for porn, and there's justification around it, like they're blaming religious groups for the shame around porn, when really the shame around porn comes from the shame around porn. And there's all this ridiculous stuff out there that we have that keeps pornography firmly in place in some people's lives. We also have this notion that we ought to be ashamed and shame people that look at pornography. And so spouses that get caught, like if a husband gets caught looking at pornography and the wife kicks him out to the couch, well, he feels lonely and ashamed. That's not a proper treatment for extinguishing pornography use. That actually increases pornography use. Now, she shouldn't bring him into her bed after catching him looking at pornography and objectifying women and make love to him, because that would be recreation. They should work together to extinguish pornography out of their marriage and partner on it without pride and ego. Okay, and so there's a way through that we'll talk about in another one. Let's confuse the issue of monogamy. Let's introduce a fancy term that might soften multiple partners and cheating on each other. Let's call it polyamory. Let's look at enough pornography that we think that sex is the most important thing. We don't believe it's sacred about procreation and making love towards a connection. We think that it's an avenue of just feeling good because we have all this pride that we deserve to feel good all the time. And so let's call it polyamory. That means lots of love instead of cheat on your wife or cheat on your relationship. And let's introduce that to the popular group and have them talk about how it's enlightening and how it's the way to go. Now, I don't want to sit in judgment of people in polyamorous relationships. I love the people. I love the fact that they are trying the very best they can to find connection in a world that's pretty horrible sometimes. I love the fact that they are tender with each other when they're tender. I also want to introduce the fact that polyamory is not monogamy. Polyamory is different. Monogamy is about a loyal connection filled with fidelity, intimacy, growth together towards old age. And you go through the stages of relationship with a person, with your person. And you are faithful and loyal to your person without pride and ego, without selfishness. And you learn how to be unselfish. You don't learn unselfishness in polyamorous relationships. You might learn to not be jealous, which I guess that's a good thing. But to learn true intimacy and connection, you grow with a person to become one together. And one means 200% whole. That's each of you are whole, coming together, cleaving together. And so if we can get rid of that and confuse identity, confuse monogamy, and confuse intimacy with chasing an orgasm or chasing a feeling, then we're going to destroy joy and happiness. So this is just one way. We're going to have a series of these, how to destroy joy and peace. Joy and peace is found in family relationships when there's no ego, no pride. It's found when there's lots of empathy, lots of communication and cooperation. And so we need to avoid pride, judgment, and we need to avoid competition. Relationships that are joy-filled and peace-filled are required to put time and energy into it. They're required to learn and lean into each other and share strengths and weaknesses so that they're all out in the open. It's also required that we exercise complete fidelity and loyalty and faithfulness. And so these things intact drive joy and peace. If I want to destroy joy and peace, I introduce pride, competition. I introduce the idea of operations are all that matter. All that you do matters, makes you more. The more you do, the more you are. And then I'd introduce a destruction of intimacy and loyalty and fidelity. So those things intact drive joy and peace. Those things destroy joy and peace. Does that make sense? We'll have a series on these. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.